My name is Rob Mattern with Mattern, and I am honored to be here with John Riggleman, Firm Administrator, Caplin and Drysdale. John, how are you doing there?
Fantastic. Good to be here.
Good. I told you I had trouble sleeping last night because I was so excited about talking about offsite record storage with you. So it's going to be a great call. We got a lot of great insights and can't wait to dive into it. But before we get started, just some simple housekeeping rules. Everyone is muted. If you want to participate, which we encourage, unmute yourself, introduce yourself. Once you're done speaking, please put yourself back on mute to avoid background noise. If you do not want to speak and you have a question or a comment, submit them through chat, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. If anything is a question, we'll work it in. If it's a comment, again, I'm going to throw it out there. If we don't get to it, we'll follow up afterwards and make sure we address it. So again, if you want to participate, we encourage that. If you would like to submit through chat, again, we encourage that, and we will work that in as we walk through the presentation. At the conclusion of the presentation, the discussion, there'll be some wrap-up questions. Please take the time to fill them out. Gives us great feedback moving forward. We also have received a number of submitted questions that we will cover throughout. Some we have to clarify. But again, a lot of great feedback on this topic, and we look forward to discussing it with you. So, before we get started on the offsite record storage, I started reading this book about golf. Try to play a lot of golf. I'm not very good, but I like to play it. And it's called The Four Foundations of Golf by John Sherman. And I'm reading it last night. And the first two foundations he covers is realistic expectations. And it's, again, he's given some numbers that I was shocked at. He said like from 100 yards out, the average pro will hit the ball, a wedge shot, from anywhere from 18 to 20 feet from the hole. And I was like, that to me, that's I could do that once in a while. Not often, okay, but I could do it once in a while. But and the problem is, he says, listen, on TV, they don't show those shots. They show the shots that stop 1 foot away and then backspin into the hole, or end up 3 feet and roll in or whatever. But the average is 18 to 20 feet. For amateurs, the average is 50 to 65 feet away from the hole, which may not even be on the green, if you think about it. So his point is have realistic expectations. Second part, the second foundation is avoid trouble. If you hit your ball into the trees, that's going to cost you 1.1 strokes on average for that hole. If you hit it into a fairway bunker, it's going to cost you 1.4 strokes for that hole. So his point is, whatever you do, avoid trouble. So I'm reading this last night and I'm thinking, you know what? That's exactly what John and I are going to be talking about today. Setting up realistic expectations in negotiating and managing an offsite record storage contract in a dying market. Okay, and that's an important point to keep in mind. And how to avoid trouble with your contracts. Okay, I can't tell you how many phone calls we get, emails we get saying, hey, I'm getting charged this and whatever. Right. So, well, what does your contract say? Well, we didn't cover it. We're going to talk about those types of things today. So you avoid trouble in either your current contract, your renegotiation, or when you sign a new one down the road, things that you should put in your contract to avoid trouble. So that being said, let's get started. John, why don't you talk about our history together and your situation with your current vendor, Iron Out?
Perfect. Well, what Rob was talking about, I hit it into that fairway bunker, and Rob helped me fix the issue. So what happened was we had a 10-year contract with Iron Mountain, and our mistake, unfortunately, we allowed that contract, that long-term contract, to lapse in October of 2024. So as a result of that, of course, we received some nice letters from Iron Mountain about our price increases, our out of contract price increases. They were anywhere from 3% to 125% based on the different um, items in the contract. Our storage alone went up from 29 cents to 40 cents a cubic foot. That was a 35% increase. So I, of course, reached out to, actually, I think I listened to one of these back in 2025 on a different subject and reached out to Rob after that and asked him if they could assist us in some contract renegotiation because we clearly had let our contract lapse. And we are now in a bit of at the mercy, I will say, of Iron Mountain. Once you're out of contract, you lose a lot of leverage. We learned that lesson the hard way. And we also, one other thing is which was part of what Mattern helped us with, was we need a destruction plan, and we have a lot of boxes that need to be destroyed. So we started pricing that out based on our new, non-contract. And just one example, we had about 2,300 cubic feet of boxes, about 950 boxes, and they were quoting us 40 grand, which was $41 a box to destroy. And they were just we needed assistance. We needed help on sort of rebalancing our records equation. So that's sort of how I came about in this process and what we've been dealing with for the past year.
Okay. Okay. Let's cover a few points here. Okay, first of all, they had a 10-year contract. We are fans of 10-year contracts, 7 to 10 years. And I'll get more into that later on in this discussion. But once you get out of contract, and really one of the first things I said to John was, geez, your price only went up 35% on storage. The average we see is 38%. So you're on the low end, which is shocking. But once you're out of contract, you're out of protection, all bets are off on these increases. And you heard John say anywhere from 3 to 123% or 125%. So again, first, most important, and John even laughed about it because run home and check your contracts and make sure you're still within term. Okay. That is a very, very simple. And again, we're going to get more into this down the road here. Very simple, but a critical step here, and John, you learn the hard way.
Right. We made a mistake. We did not stay on top of when our contract ended. We thought we had a nice long-term, which we did. We had a great long-term contract, but we didn't stay on top of it. So that's my first best practices. Go read your contract when you get off the call.
And also too, what happens when you're out of contract? Typically, they could increase prices on 30 days notice as many times as they want. Now, Iron Mountain typically does it once a year. I think you got nailed with a couple of increases.
We did
in that time frame.
We did. We have the initial increase, and then I will say, fortunately, we were already in negotiation with them, but I believe they tried to twice during our negotiation. Well, they sent us notices of increases, I think, twice while we were working through a new contract. Had it not been that we were already talking to them, we would have had 2 additional increases potentially. So another lesson I learned is they really can just increase your rates once you're out of contract, and you don't have
because again,
control.
You don't have control. Okay. Other things in the contract, on the contract that expired there was no performance standards or penalties. We're going to talk about them, including them. Termination process. If you terminate a contract, they're going to want to get paid their Perm-Out fees, typically all up front. Again, we're going to spend some time on that. But also, too, they try to minimize the rate of transfer. Okay, so now Iron Mountain saying, hey, listen, we'll transfer 1,200 boxes per market per month. That's also their destruction goal too. So we'll talk about it moving on. But we want to make sure we concentrate on what the termination process looks like going forward. Because otherwise, you're paying this Perm-Out fee. They want it all up front, and then they hold your boxes. They're only transferring 1,200. It would have taken 3 years to transfer your volume to another vendor, and you're meanwhile paid $700,000 in Perm-Out fees, plus still paying storage. It's a racket. So we want to make sure we get that covered in a new contract. So you reached out to Mattern, and we sat down. We knocked out some goals. You want to share those?
Sure. I mean, of course, it was improved pricing, right? Improved pricing, long-term protection, right? It's like what we learned. We had a nice 10-year contract. We learned the value of price protection, where your rates only go up a certain amount every year. One of our big goals was cost-effective destruction. I will say we have been lax on destruction. So that was one of our personal goals, is we needed cost-effective destruction written into our next contract. And the other, I will say, other value points that I wanted was to know that I am paying competitive rates. I mean, all of us are very siloed. Everyone who's in this business, there's not a whole lot of talking between firms regarding this issue. So just making sure I'm paying what I should be paying as a firm administrator. And then the other value that I think comes out of this is, many of you who probably deal with Iron Mountain or deal with other vendors, I find it very difficult to talk to the right people at Iron Mountain who can actually make a decision and you can actually work with. So that was one of our other, was to find assistance to actually get the right contact people and have long-term the right contact people. So when we have issues, we know who to go to. We have invoicing issues. We have any sort of issue. So those were sort of the goals that I laid out to Rob when we met.
Okay. And then we did a benchmark of your contract and say, hey, listen, here's where we're at. Here's where I think we could get you. Okay. Again, there's a lot of things that go into that. The amount of Perm-Out fees, in your case, about $740,000, which were, again, in the renewal, those prices went up, or when you were out of contract, those prices
Yes.
went up substantially too.
Oh,
So
substantially,
again, if
way
you
more
did,
than, yeah.
yeah. So if we were able to do this during the contract, the whole thing changes. So again, the benchmark's extremely important to know exactly what you're going to be up against or where you should be. And then again, getting a plan to handle it within the contract and not get into this out of contract phase. There's also some performance issues, right? With Iron Mountain that you want to address.
Yeah, I mean, there was the general records account management. One of the things that Iron Mountain has moved to is UPS ground delivery. I don't know how many people use Iron Mountain on here, but they have moved to basically delivering your boxes via the big brown truck, and instead of where they used to actually bring them to you. So there were various things where we were not receiving the level of performance that my records department needed.
And then Iron Mountain's known for their carousel of account management, which
Yes.
again ties your hands in regards to getting things done.
Yes.
So,
100%.
okay. Okay. So you decided to do, based upon the numbers or report, we decided to do a open RFP. And we sent it out to GRM and Access.
Correct.
Okay. Um, Nutshell, where did you end up?
I would say the process was very, very good. We decided to stay with Iron Mountain. Part of that, so we received very competitive pricing from the other two companies. We had to look at, when we made our decision, about what our goals were. And I think I said earlier, one of our goals was destruction. So when we looked at, well, if we moved our boxes to GRM or Access, what would be our ability to destroy those boxes within a certain time period? And, it's all negotiation, and part of them covering our exit fees where we had to maintain a certain number of boxes for a certain period of time. So a financial analysis was done of the entire 7 years. And because of the pricing we were able to receive on destruction as part of our new Iron Mountain contract, that was basically less than sort of these X-out fees, right? So it's just a mathematical formula. You figure out where your situation is. I will say this, if we were in a much better position regarding our having a clean inventory, it may have made sense to move to a different vendor because we were probably getting a better storage cost per box. But we had the issue of we have to destroy a lot of boxes in the next 5 to 7 years. So this is why the Iron Mountain contract turned out to be best for Caplin. So it's a very individualistic, you work with, Rob's team and you work through all those issues about what's important for you and what your goals are I think the biggest thing that really determines like where you come out.
Okay, great point. Okay, let me, I'm just going to repeat what John said that, okay, we're looking for a vendor to pay $740,000 to get this inventory. Every vendor out there is going to want to, has to recover that cost. No one's blaming them.
Right.
But what happens is the way they do it is, they're counting on that storage of that box for 7 years that they paid to get. So they limit the amount of destruction of those boxes. That didn't work for the firm. They were looking to destroy and get out. Your firm may be different, okay? So you got to be careful of that. What kind of limits are they putting on you in regards to destroying? Because really, when we enter and everyone should think this way, this should be the last offset record storage contract you ever sign. If you have a retention policy, okay, information governance policy with retention schedules, and typically anywhere from 7 to 10 years. John, your firm's 5 years, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we go into a longer term deal, and I want to talk about the length of these deals. This should do it. Other than what signature or vault storage that you have to keep forever. Okay. You should be out of it. That should be the goal here. So I always say, hey, listen, we want to make this the last contract the firm ever signs. Okay. And if you got the right policies in place and you're in compliance and you're pushing that, that should be entirely feasible. Okay. But again, if that inventory is coming from another vendor over, they're going to want to limit the amount of destruction that you're able to do so they can recap that Perm-Out fee that they paid. We've done this model a couple of times, and some vendors are okay with it, other ones are not. We'd like to make that a separate line item, that Perm-Out fee, and just amortize over 7 to 10 years that you're paying, but that does not limit then your destruction. So again, you got to take care of that nut. In John's case, because we wanted to destroy, Iron Mountain didn't have that nut. Now, a couple other things I want to point out here. All the pricing at the end of the day, or really between Iron Mountain and another vendor, were very similar from a savings viewpoint. Okay? Which goes to show you that Iron Mountain, they're not paying that $740,000 per amount fee. So that's extra profit to them. Okay, so that's something else to keep in mind. That other vendor is absorbing that, and again, passing it back through to the client. But that shows you that Iron Mountain's not paying that. So that's just an extra $750,000 in their pocket over the length of the contract. So something to keep in mind. Okay. Also, too, another thing about, because we were in a renewal with Iron Mountain, year-to-year renewal, it's very, very difficult to get Iron Mountain to budge on pricing at that point. Okay, we improved the terms, we got some allowances for destruction, but very little movement on pricing. Really, the big winners here were some contract terms, the amount of allowances on destruction, and the escalators. We were able to drive down their escalators, which amounted to substantial savings over a 7-year contract. But once you get into a renewal with all these vendors, it's really, really difficult for them to get movement on pricing. All the more reason to do it, these contract negotiations, while you're still under contract on the original. Okay? Anything I'm missing there, John?
Nope, that is very well said. And I agree 100% is that's why I seriously said everyone should look at their contract and figure out when the end date is and figure out a plan before you get there. Because we did learn the hard way because we may be paying less than 40 cents a box if we had not let ourselves out of contract, right? Because they could have only pushed so much over that contract. But lesson learned, and that's why I'm here to happy to tell everyone to say, you know, figure out where you are and figure out a long-term solution now, but not when you have 1 month left in your current contract.
Okay, so I tell you what, we got some best practices we're going to talk about here. But John, why don't you just repeat your pearls of wisdom? One,
Okay.
obviously, being within contract. Um,
Um, the other thing is one thing I've learned in this process is really review your invoices. I will give you all a story. Even after we signed the new contract, the last 3 months, we have seen relid and rebox charges on every invoice for the last 3 months. We have never asked for one box to have a relid and one box to be reboxed. It's something that Iron Mountain has decided that they were just going to do for us at a tune of like $6,000 over 3 months. Um, with some assistance, we've pushed back on them, and that is of course coming off the bill. But there's just my other thing is don't set it and forget it. I think is the term. It's like make sure you have someone who's really looking at your invoices. We only deal with Iron Mountain,
you,
but they will do things that if you're not on top of it, they're getting free payments for things that you never asked for. So just, and my other part of wisdom is find a partner that helps you in this process, whether it's Mattern or one of the other companies out there, is find someone who can help you, who can work with you, who knows the industry. There's many things that we do. We deal with a lot on a daily basis as people that run different departments or run law firms. Deal with someone who understands the marketplace and knows the players and just what you should be paying is the easiest thing because it gave me peace of mind to know that my contract's pretty much in terms with what the market is out there. And that's, when I have to report up to my board, they want to know, are we paying the market rates, right? I don't want to say, oh no, I'm paying 20% above what I should be paying. It's not what you want to report. So those are some of my, words of wisdom from my
okay,
learning through this process.
okay. I tell you, in full disclosure, we are working with John on the monitor the invoices and the contract adherence. We like performance standards and penalties if they're not in in compliance. So Mattern handles that for the firm. But again, John, you made a mention yesterday is, hey, the person that does that for Mattern says, hey, we're seeing this at all these accounts right now. They're on this relitting, reboxing frenzy. Okay. Um, and you say, hey, you mentioned, hey, I wouldn't know that. I'm in a silo, you know. So okay. Any other pros you want to throw out there, John?
Um, no, no, I think that's it. It's just really, just stay on top. And I will say the other word of wisdom is, I know we're guilty of this. Records aren't, a hot thing to deal with every day, but stay on top of your retention, your destruction, and things like that. Just because I've also learned through this process, right? I will say for me, I think it tied our hands on our ability to move around because we had this need for destruction. So it's just all encompassing is stay on top of your entire situation because it allows more flexibility when you get into a contract negotiation, whether it's a renewal or whether it's moving.
Okay. Um, we also looked at that as part of this project, and I'll just throw out some best practices. We strongly encourage firms that when you retrieve a box from offsite record storage, you scan it. And then if you have to send that back, you want to still hold on to the paper, and we could argue that point, um, do that, okay? Or just permanently withdraw at that point, but scan the contents, put it into your DMS system. To use that opportunity to decrease your offsite record storage. So digitize boxes when they're retrieved. Also scan newly closed matters. Don't send that box offsite. Set up a process internally to scan those documents, and then again, either return to the client. If you still have to retain the paper, fine, but chances are you don't. Um, so look at scanning newly closed matters. Outcarded. This is always an eye-opening situation for firms. You take a box back out of your offsite record storage, you bring it back into your office, and ends up in some partner's office in the corner, covered by his coat and other papers. And you go to do a offsite record storage, and you find out that hey, there's 1,000 boxes outcarded that have been out for anywhere from 3 to 7 years. Well, you're still paying storage on that box when you retrieve that. Okay, unless you permanently withdraw it. So you're paying storage for these boxes that many times people can't find. Okay. Also, too, if you go to transfer to another vendor, they're not going to reimburse you the Perm-Out on those outcarded boxes. Okay, so the firm may have to pay out of their pocket on these permanent withdrawal fees for these outcarded boxes that no one could ever find. They should have just been permanently withdrawn. But again, as part of it, if you're looking at a competitive situation, a lot of firms don't count on those outcarded boxes creeping up. I think John, you had about $7,000 to $10,000 worth of outcarded boxes.
Yep.
Again, do an audit once a year, find out. Um, Return originals to clients. A lot of firms have always been in the mindset they want to hold on to this stuff. Okay? Get rid of it, return it to the client. They're not reimbursing you for the offsite record storage, so why should you hold it for? And last but not least, get scan pricing from these offsite record storage vendors.
Mhm.
Okay, again, I'm not going to say it's going to be really competitive, but it's something nice to have in your hip pocket so that if their situation comes up, they can scan it for you. Okay, so just some best practices we like to do when we're engaged. John, anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think you covered everything. I mean, it's the the other value I would say with having a partner are a lot of like one of the things that I was not aware of. I will say honestly, what was the perming out issue? Because in some instances, you can bring that box and scan it, perm it out, and it might be cheaper than having it destroyed based on what your pricing is. So there's also strategies. I guess the biggest other, there's the contract and there's the pricing you pay. But there's also another side to this that I would say was enlightening for myself and my records team. It's sort of the record strategy of best how to deal with your information that is maybe the lowest cost point on how to deal with that box, depending on what you need to do with it. Do you need to destroy it or can you bring it back and scan it and permanently check it out? Maybe that's cheaper. And you can't do that for 5,000 boxes, but there may be instances where that's the right thing to do instead of bringing it in and having it sit in a partner's office or something. So there's a strategic part of this of managing your records that's also very important and for records geeks and people that like those things. 'Cause it's interesting, right? It's like you're it's a like a commodity. I mean, you have a box, and that box is costing you a certain amount of dollars depending on what you do with it. And it's just important to know what that box costs you every time you do something with it. Whether it's sitting there, you're bringing it on, you're destroying it, it's a cost. They those contracts have costs for everything.
Yep.
So it's important to
And
know
some
what they
things you
are.
never even thought about. So, well,
That
I
is
tell you,
correct.
okay, that's going to lead up to some of the best practices. First of all, put language in your contract that they can't add new charges unless they get written permission from the firm. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable ask. Okay, that you have to give permission for them to add new charges. During COVID, you started to see vaccination charges. If you want a vaccinated driver show up, they wanted you to pay for that. It's ridiculous. So again, I've given up on trying to get a Christmas card from Iron Mountain. And John, you're probably not getting one either.
I
Um,
am not.
but really, you have to protect yourself. You got to stay out of trouble. Um, okay, the only way to get movement, if your contract's coming up and you want substantial movement, and this is before you hit that first renewal and they gouge you, is to go out and get competitive bids. You could ask, you could threaten, you could be the best negotiator in the world, but they're not going to move unless they feel that population of boxes is under threat. So you have to get competitive pricing in order for them to feel that. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you got to hit before the renewals. Once it's in renewal, it only gets tougher for you. Um, you're always on the hook for the Perm-Out fees. Whether it's year one of a 10-year contract or year seven of a 10-year contract, whatever, you're always on the hook. So that gives you the ability to go out and get new pricing at any time during that length of that contract. Don't wait till the end, a year or two out, because go out and get new pricing. And if you don't like it, you got time to do a competitive shopping. Okay. And if you decide to go with a competitor, it gives you time to move that inventory prior to the end of the contract, where then that renewal kicks in and they really gouge you, especially if they know they're losing that population of boxes. So earlier in your term, the better. And let's talk about terms. Um, Again, I already mentioned, big fan of 7 to 10 years. And that should really, again, hopefully be the last contract you sign. Well, I tell you, I'll be sitting with a firm and they'll say, yeah, we don't do 7 or 10 years. We only do 3-year contracts. And they're, well, this contract you signed here, you signed it in 1997. And here is 2025 as a 3-year contract, 1-year renewal. So you really signed a 43-year contract here. You just didn't realize it. It's all bundled under 1997 with renewals in there. So why would he be averse to a 7 or 10-year contract if you're protected? And that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to protect you from market increases, okay? Or the fact that they know they have you over a barrel and they could jack your rate up. So be open-minded to a longer-term contract. Um, okay, the move. Right now, they're only willing to move 1,200 cubic feet per market. Okay, well, how many markets am I in, Rob? Okay, well, it depends upon where your firm's located at. Some firms are a one market firm. That means they're only going to move 1,200 per month. I already mentioned it's going to take 3 years to move a 40,000 cubic foot inventory. That doesn't work financially in a lot of the times. However, depending upon where your firms are located at, you may be in different markets. So that 1,200 may go up based upon where your offices are at. Okay. Another thing, I'll throw this out here too. Everyone thinks, I'll say, well, hey, where do you think your boxes are located at? And they'll say, well, probably that, warehouse, 5 miles away. I'd be willing to bet you chances are your boxes aren't located there. They spread your inventory wherever they have availability. So a lot of people think, oh, I'll just go down to the warehouse there. I'll look up and the whole shelving unit will be mine. I know exactly where all my boxes are at. Chances are that that's not the case. It's going to be spread over different facilities. There's been a number of situations over the past years about warehouses collapsing or fires, and people think, oh, my entire population went up in smoke. Some people are very, very happy about that. Um, but chances are all your boxes aren't there. So you're still got a sizable population. So it's always a good question to ask, where exactly are my boxes located at? If you have some records that you got to hold on to that you can't get rid of for a long duration, I'm not talking about wet signatures that should be in a vault, but there's also deeper storage, they call it. Deep storage that are very remote locations. They can store your boxes at usually a lower price. Okay, payment of Perm-Out fees. Just want to talk about that. Chances are your contract's silent on the payment of the Perm-Out fees. You terminate a contract, you're going to get an invoice for the entire amount of your Perm-Out fees. Okay? In John's case, it was $740,000. Okay? Big number. A lot of firms don't want to pay that upfront, and we don't think you should. So that's where the negotiations come in, and the fact that it's not detailed in your contract. Now they're getting smart and they're putting language in there that it is, but it's always negotiable. So we'll do something, we'll strike a deal that, hey, listen, we'll pay you 1/4 in advance, and we'll reconcile at the end of the month based upon how many boxes you're able to move over to the new vendor or wherever you're putting those boxes. You don't want to be paying that all front. And the reason why is terrific, a chunk of money typically. Also, too, how many times have you recalled boxes from storage? This is especially true if your boxes have been um, uh, rolled up. You were with a vendor and they got bought by someone else. A lot of times those boxes aren't findable. We had a client, Parker Poe, down in North Carolina. We did their offset record storage contract. And again, the vendor wanted all their money up front. We worked out a quarterly type payment system. We also worked in language saying, hey, if you can't give me all 100,000 cubic feet of boxes that you've been billing me for the last 5 years, I get a credit for that storage. And obviously, I'm not going to pay the Perm-Out fee on it. At the end of the day, they roughly 10% of that population, 10,000 cubic feet, they couldn't find. So we end up not getting a credit back on the storage and obviously not paying the Perm-Out fee. So we don't want to pay it all up front. We want to negotiate that, spread that out, and also do the reconciliation. And I'll throw this in here. Don't be afraid of a transfer. I mentioned that a lot of times. People's eyes cloud over. They start sweating. It's really a well-managed transfer is an easy transfer. It has to be managed, no doubt about it, but we want to make sure we reconcile what comes out, reconcile what goes to the new vendor. We keep track of it. I tell you, we used to get language in there that, hey, as long as they have your boxes, they are limited on the amount of increases and the frequency. Try to get language in there for that. Okay. We got some clients that it was better for them to stay on a month-to-month contract after they went through the original term because of language like that. They weren't able to get screwed on a renewal or the yearly renewal. Also, too, another point, if you paid Perm-Out fees in your original contract you're living under now, your next renewal should recognize that that Perm-Out fee the vendor paid to get those boxes is over. You typically amortize it over the length of the contract. So if you signed a 5-year contract, they amortize that cost. Your price should be going down by the amount of the Perm-Out fees that you paid. And if you're going to a new contract, make sure that's itemized in the new contract. So just some best practices. Any other questions or comments, don't hesitate to submit them. And we got about 5 minutes to wrap things up. And I'm going to, John, anything you want to add here?
No, it just one thing there are a lot of hidden fees. I mean, one of the things we talked about was, if you want to even look at what's in a box, look in your contract. There are really high fees for you to even send someone out there to look at a box, for them to look in the box and tell you what's in it. And you can very easily, you're like, oh, I want to pull these 100 boxes and have them look and tell me what's in them. You need to look in your contract because there's a sizable fees in there for them to do that. So that was important for, there's just a lot of fees in there that you don't realize that if you ask them to do something, you're going to get these charges and you're like, well, where did that come from? And it's buried on page 3 of their fee chart in some language that you're like, well, what is that? And it's just
Right.
it's there's just a lot of different fees. They, like I said, that box is a commodity. They will get you for anything that you want to do with it. And it's just important to have those protections in place and cost certain over a period of time.
Great point. Okay. Some of the questions we got prior to this discussion. How to reduce permanent withdrawal and destruction costs. Okay, great question. I'm going to start off by saying, do you know what's in the box or you don't know what's in the box? Okay, if you don't know, do you have to know? And I'll raise that question that we Fox Rothschild is one of our clients. They've absorbed a lot of firms. Some had great record management systems with detailed information, but a lot don't. And we would take a look at it and say, hey, this box has been in storage for 30 years, has never been retrieved. The attorney who handled this situation is no longer with the firm, and that client is no longer a client. And we would do the analysis and tee that up for the GC of Fox to make that determination whether we got to spend the money because it is big bucks to bring that box back, flip the lid, and have someone with some knowledge go through it. So a lot of times I'll say, hey, do we really have to do that? Or can we destroy sight unseen? And we've been able to save a lot of money for clients over the years by making them comfortable with destroying that sight unseen. Sometimes we'll bring, if there's 1,000 boxes more than 20 years old, we'll bring back, you know, a sample size, go through them, see what's in them, and then make a determination. Okay, listen, there's nothing valuable here. We can do it. So sometimes the sample will do the trick. How often retrieved, another great indicator. The other way, so that's the way we could work on keeping those costs down. But again, create a competitive situation when you're negotiating your contracts, drive those rates down. Everyone focuses on the cubic foot. Yes. But all the retrieval, the handling now, fees they're including, permanent withdrawal and destruction. They're equally as important.
Well,
Focus
and
on them.
just on that note for everyone, it's like the other contracts were far less cubic foot charges, but because we were able to negotiate, because our key was destruction, we were able to focus on that. That's what sort of made our contract a better contract for us over 7 years. Was we had a goal and we focused on those numbers, and then that made it cheaper for us in the long run to take that contract. So it's just, when you're doing these things, it's not just negotiating that cubic foot, like Rob said. It's what is your goal over that 7 years, and you focus on sort of some of those items, and you almost give a little bit on the cubic foot because you want to destroy stuff, so you want to be more aggressive on the destruction cost. And it, as it turns out, it saved us 18% over what our cost would have been over that amount of time.
Yep. Focus on the escalators too. Another great way
Right.
to drive down future cost. Actually, allowances. And this is what we did with John's contract. Get allowances for destruction. Now, I'll be honest with you. 10 years ago, when we were negotiating these contracts, firm will say, "Yeah, I'm going to be able to destroy half my population. I want the biggest allowance I can get." Never used them. They thought it was going to be easy to destroy this stuff. Now firms are much more intelligent going after this stuff. They got the policies approved. So ask for allowances. Hey, I want 5,000 cubic feet of free destruction. Okay, or free permanent withdrawal. And now again, it's not free, but you get allowance. You don't have to pay for it. But Another great way to drive down that cost. Also, too, if you have a large batch of boxes you want destroyed and you know you can do it, and you don't necessarily have to look at them, ask for a bulk destruction rate. Okay, negotiate. It don't, hey, I know it's this in my contract, but you know what? I'm giving you 5,000 at the same time, and you could destroy them over the next 2 months. I don't have to be, I have no timetable here. So ask for a special bulk rate. Oh, the worst they could do is say no. It's like, but it's a great way to drive down that cost. Um, Iron Mountain tactics. John, I looked at this question earlier. It's like, boy, that's a pretty wide open question. If you want to clarify, the person who submitted that, but um, biggest thing is don't go out of contract. Don't get into that renewal. Create competitive situations and watch the invoices
And one other thing
and try to
is,
find a decision maker.
right, yes, that's, I will say that's one of the biggest problems at Iron Mountain is from a firm standpoint is getting, I will call it getting inside Iron Mountain, getting, finding someone that you can actually talk to that makes a difference because our experience was you got to run around a lot and no one could ever like make a decision. So that's why it was one of my references is finding a partner that can help you is just, you know, those folks deal with those people every day. So they know who they can get you to, where you
A-
just can't.
Any partners you have in mind there, John? We wanted to
There's this guy named Rob Mattern. I don't know. He's pretty good at
yeah.
this.
I tell you, the reason I said, John, don't, this is not a sales pitch. So I said, don't mention us, but I appreciate the plug there. Um, okay. Cost-effective strategies for perm destruction of offsite storage docks. I have just over 2 years remaining on my contract. Well, I tell you, the first thing, start on your next contract if you're still going to have storage at the end of this 2 years. It gives you time to either, drive a competitive process or move it. Um, Bulk destruction rates, I already mentioned that. Do you have to look at the box or you can destroy set unseen? A big factor. If you do have to know what's in there, um, I tell you, there's no easy or cheap way to flip the lid other than doing a sample size. Um, so
Well,
something to keep in mind. Just got a post here. I've been dealing with their in-house counsel, Juan Diego Fernandez. Okay. At ironmountain.com. So everyone, I don't know if he could help you, but it's never hurts to reach out. So
one point that what Rob was making on the last point was, also look at your contract because even though you have 2 years, if you have a certain number of boxes you have to destroy, well, maybe will only destroy 1,000 cubic foot a month, right? So you may not
good point.
have 10,000. Well, you may be out of contract by the time they actually get to destroying all of it. So it is like I agree with Rob. It's sort of start looking at that now because even if you extend for a couple of years because you need to get that maybe a larger bulk rate because it's not going to be done in 2 years. So there's these little idiosyncratic things in the contracts about how much they can destroy, how much time they have. You're still paying fees. Just some side thoughts on that.
And I tell you, I just want to highlight Deanna, who does approve our offset record storage invoice. She was with Iron Mountain for a number of years in Access. But make sure your storage decreases by the amount you're destroying. And you think that's common sense. Okay. Deanna, how many times have we had to go back and get credits for storage that should have been taken off because the boxes were destroyed? It's always an issue. Way too many. Okay, that's a great answer, but something to keep in mind. So, John, we went 5 minutes over.
Well, hopefully everyone got a lot of knowledge out of this.
I tell you, I hopefully they did. John, I can't thank you enough. Great perspective. It was a great process, and deeply appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And
Okay,
I look at it, we're a big community, so we always law firms always try to help each other. So hopefully this has given some good knowledge to folks.
I'm sure it has. Okay, just one last comment before I wrap up. If you schedule a bulk destruction on certain boxes, does the storage fee stop on those boxes? Yes. Now there may be a time there, and you want to wrap that up, but I tell you, they'll drag your feet unless they're under some pressure um, to destroy those boxes because they want to keep on collecting that storage. So, okay. Again, John, great job, and thank you very much.
Thank everyone.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.